Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blue Star Rising, Templar Awakening. Michael Henry Dunn back with you again with my very good friend, Reverend Maya Nortumit. And hello, Maya. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's a beautiful day here in Crestone, nice and sunny and snowy, kind of, but the sun is shining, so that's good.
Right, and I've got Crestone here behind me in the virtual world, though I'm coming to you from sunny California, where it's actually unseasonably cold for February here in Los Angeles. Um, I love that the actual proper name of LA, which we usually just call LA, is uh, La Ciudad de la Reina de Los Angeles. It is the city of the Queen of the Angels.
I didn't know the word queen was in there. I knew City of the Angels.
No, La Ciudad de la Reina de Los
Ah,
Angeles. It is Mother
yes.
Mary. This is Mother Mary's city, in fact. That's how it was named. And there's a beautiful cathedral in Assisi called Queen of the Angels, I believe. Yeah. Anyway, so always good to start out with angelic energy. And today's subject may sound general, but it's going to get quite specific in a fascinating way. And this is essentially about not only the history of the dark and light forces on our beautiful home planet, but also how they're interacting now, how those interactions are unfolding towards what we hopefully look forward to as a great quantum leap forward in human consciousness, known by various people as ascension dynamic, call it what you will, and which has been a primary focus for Blue Star Rising, and of course for much of Reverend Maya's work, with the quantum logic and interactive growing network of souls that are doing that cooperative work with folks upstairs, folks in the inner earth, folks on the ground, and now hopefully you folks. So anyway, welcome back to Blue Star Rising. So Maya, I know you want to give a little bit of an introduction and history as you've received it from the Thothic stream over the years about the elements, we might almost say the factions, dark and light, the various star genetics that have been in play on planet Earth for thousands, if not millions of years, and how that dynamic is evolving and unfolding right now, and how each of us can do our best to, without having it get too complicated or overwhelming, how we can understand the big picture and feel more aligned with our unique, appropriate next steps as the individual souls that we are. Because we always try to share with everybody the cosmic picture, the planetary picture, and as best we can, the personal. So with that, do you want to just give an overview of what we'll be sharing today?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit more than an overview. I'm going to go into some detail, not too much, because it's a topic that, you really can't jump into the middle with. Um, History of darkness and light on this planet is rather immense and foreboding in some ways, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel and in the middle of the tunnel and on a lot of places in the tunnel, and we're going to discuss that as well, of course. But the big question that sure is not just on my mind, but on everyone's mind, it has been through ages, but now especially, is why is there so much turmoil on this planet? Why is there so much negativity and man's inhumanity to man and to nature and animals? Why is that here? And juxtaposed with it are these beautiful souls that do so much good on the planet. I mean, I know it doesn't get in the news a lot, but there's so many people on this planet that are they're full of light and they're doing such good things for humanity, but it seems to be so constantly overshadowed by the negativity that has such a strong arm on this planet. And we've given it, I say we, the collective we, have given it reign on this planet. So why is that? You know, why is that? And this is something that I've gone to Thoth back and forth with through time, but mostly through these last few years. And so I'm not going to be explaining it perfectly by any means. I'm just going to give you my insight from what I have received from what I call the Thothic intelligence, streaming, being, whatever. And so let's begin with, and obviously some of these things, most of these things I have spoken about before, but in pieces related to different parts of the topic. And I want to kind of bring it together very succinctly, if possible, into one unit here to see how this all came about. Again, this is all through the Thothic perspective. I can't speak in any other way here. And so we begin with Thoth speaks about the Elohim, you know, and I have a video on the Elohim. And these are the creator lords, you could say. These aren't people, but they're creator energies. And they do have a consciousness, they're entities, but they're entities beyond what we understand as entities, I guess you could say. They're in the realm of angels, but they're not quite angels either. They have their own category. However, they also, some of them dwell in the inner earth, the sacred hollow. I'm not going to go into that here, but again, there's a video on that. So you have the Elohim, and they initially brought forth the program of light that created this planet. Now, I'm not going to talk about it on a universal scale. We'd be here all day, night, in a few centuries, just talking about Mother Earth here. So I'm going to take a sip of water. They brought forth this doctrine, this command, this energy field, and it began to work for itself. It's kind of like what the inner earth people call intuitive circuitry, which I later found out because they said Nikola Tesla actually worked with intuitive circuitry, and I found out and that he actually did, and they call it Teslaphoresis because of that. They're just now discovering that Tesla had it in the Tesla coil. He didn't talk about it, but it was in there. The reason I'm mentioning that is because when the creator lords began the process on Earth, they used a similar function. What is that function? Intuitive circuitry. That means that there was a sort of light enveloped circuitry of an etheric, plasmic, whatever you want to call it. And once it was put into motion, you know, God spoke and the earth was formed and blah, blah. Once that was, the word was spoken through the sonic signal, this intuitive circuitry began to have a mind of its own, so to speak, and it began to form the world, the planet. And it did so not out of chaos, but out of divine order. First, there was chaos, and then there was divine order. Now, there's nothing wrong with chaos. Chaos is a state that allows us to find multiplicity of consciousness, multiplicity of patterns and experience. But once we do, we're intended to act upon it, not just sit there and let chaos go all over the place. We act upon it. And when we do, we bring that divine focus into experience and being. And that divine focus on this earth, tada, was the first realm of Earth. And it was a beautiful realm. And I'm not, you know, there was the Lotus reality, which I made a video on lately, and other things that happened. I'm not going to go into all of that. So then we have the planet Earth. And as the beings of Earth started collecting on this physical Earth, they came down from the etheric Earth to collect on the physical planet. At first, it wasn't so bad, but, you know, things started to unravel a bit. Now, in that unraveling, even that wasn't bad. It was just a process of spiritual cycling. You know, the universe cycles things. And when you were in that physical area of consciousness, that's what started to happen. But as that started to happen, that leaves, shall we say, loopholes. It leaves areas of vulnerability. And in the vulnerability, if you don't just focus the light very, very strong in those points, what you get is intrusions. So intrusions began to happen because the people of the earth had come down into a level where they were beginning to lose their focus, not compared to what we have now, but it was losing it. And so here we have a point of intrusion. Here we have a point of intrusion. It's just think of it as a science project, okay? And you've got these little microbes kind of going, doop, doop, doop into the cell. Oh, I see a point. I can enter here. Oh, I can feed over here, and it just started doing that. And eventually, what Thoth speaks of is the archonic cloud, and he's using some words that, we use in our vocabulary, archons and all of this. But the archons is pictured like beings, like these big evil beings, with horns and everything. That's not the Thothic picture. It's a cloud. It's a miasm, like a viral cloud. He called it virus long before you know what. And he said it like a viral cloud, and it's just feeding along in the universe when it's moving through these low level magnetic fields. And the earth became sort of in that low level magnetic field, or touching it, reaching it. So the cloud went, oh, yum, yum. And it went and started, interacting with the planet. It couldn't overwhelm the planet. There was too much light there. Let's get that straight. There's a lot of light on this earth, even today. And it comes a lot from the center of the planet, Gaia herself, gathering her children, feeding her children, and the children respond. And so this is a beautiful place in many, many, many ways. But it started being attacked. And because the guard was let down. Now, out of that situation, we had different beings coming in to mess with things, like, Thoth speaks of the Nephilim, but they're not quite like the Bible depicts them. There are a lot of different types of Nephilim, and some of them aren't so bad. But then there's, the Anunnaki thing. But that was really it was not a good intrusion. It was a very powerful intrusion, but it was not the only intrusion. It came later, and we aren't descendants of the Anunnaki. We have a few genes in there we'd rather not have, but our true powerful beginning soul genetics comes from the shepherd race, as he calls it. That's the sun lords, the Solarians. We are Solarians, many of us, and we bring that to everyone. So, we're not children of the Anunnaki. They messed with us, but we're not that. And so all of these things happen. So I'm really going fast through this thing, but I want to show the progression. So then there's something that Thoth calls the natural cap of the planet. It's an energy field. Think of a child and the way the brain forms in the head. And, it's not closed at first. The skull isn't, because, the brain's growing. So it has to have room to grow. So the skull has a little opening, as it grows and grows. And then at a certain age, I'm not biologically accurate enough to know when, as an adult, it closes. It seals. So the earth has a natural cap on it that can expand and is expanding. The reason for that, this cap has to do with what we can learn, what we can achieve, understanding as a unit, as a collective whole, how we can progress. And the reason that natural cap is there is because some souls progress a lot faster than others. They just do. They're not superior. There's a lot of reasons, karmically, genetically, soul choices, mainly, things like that. But whatever, they develop faster. So if they just took off like a whirlwind and everybody else is down there going, wait a minute, what happened? There would be such an imbalance on this planet. It wouldn't be able to work collectively in the way it's intended. So they put this cap, but it's a soft cap. So they wait till a certain energy, and then that cap naturally expands a little more. And then it comes up, another expansion. Instead of soul just all over the place, like my sound effects. Anyway, so anyway, that's the natural cap. But then, because the archonic cloud came in and said, we want to feed off of this, right? Think of it as a virus, So we're going to put our cap over the natural cap. And our cap is going to feed off of anything that reaches that level. Energy, not the soul, but the energy that reaches that level. We're going to try to interfere with it and receive it, because that's what we do. A virus is not alive. It's not a living thing. It's very mysterious. That's a whole nother subject, not going there now. But you know, that's why Thoth calls the archonic cloud a virus. So it's not a being, but it knows its job, and its job is to feed. And it feeds off of anger, fear, ignorance, all the lower vibrations, and it feeds off of things. It really does well in dense magnetic fields, because in the dense magnetic field acts as fly paper, and the little fly, and it goes, oh, I can't get my feet up. And when the fly lands on the fly paper, you know, it gets et. So that's why those magnetic fields are so dense. That's where the archonic cloud goes. So what is a dense magnetic field? Well, we're not talking about like being on Saturn or something and you're pressed into a little pill. And we're talking about consciousness that breeds. There's magnetic fields of all kinds, and consciousness breeds, you know, if it gets squished, if it gets down into a real narrow bandwidth because it's fearful, it's frustrated, it's angry, you know, it's really out there, and it creates that little narrow bandwidth. Well, that's the fly paper. So the archonic cloud goes, oh, okay, here's where I feed. Now, all you have to do if you find yourself in that really narrow bandwidth, and we all find ourselves there, don't fool yourself. I don't care how many yoga lessons you take, or, you know, what kind of books you're reading, or how much you're meditating. There are going to be times when that little old magnetic strip is going to get you just like a fly. And you're going to be trapped there for whatever long, you know, minutes, hours, days, whatever. And so when you get into that space and you feel yourself crunching down like that, it's important to think, I'm stuck on the fly paper, but I'm not stuck, because I am not a fly. I'm a human being with an incredible soul. All I have to do is lift one foot, put it over the edge, lift another foot, put it over the edge, and you're out of there, because the bandwidth may be dense, but it's narrow. It's very narrow. And all it takes is a shift of consciousness, one way or the other, little shift. And you can go, whoo, I'm free of that, you know, and then you get out of that spectrum. Now, because we have all of these things going here, right now, there's a lot of other factors working on the planet, and it has to do with dredging up and clearing out old goo that we've been holding on to for a long time. So while the archons have been feeding, the archonic cloud has been feeding off of us for a long time, what's happened now is that we're clearing out. We have to dredge up all that old stuff. Well, the archonic cloud is going, yum, yum, yum. You know, this is really great stuff. But at the same time, it feels threatened. A virus knows when it's threatened. It absolutely knows. I was listening to something the other day that said how intelligent they are, and they're not even alive, you know, and it knows when it's threatened, and it makes a strategy to survive. So what's going on now with clearing up all this stuff, even though it's coming up in our face, the archonic cloud knows it's the end days for that. And it's developing strategies to survive. But these strategies cannot win out. That doesn't mean we sit back and say, oh, it's not going to win. We'll just wait till it passes. No, then it might win. Because you are the determining factor, the human soul embodied, incarnated on this earth, walking around now, not the star kindred, not the inner earth kindred, not the angels, not the what does he call it? The Elohim. None of those beings have the right to act on that. They can help us, but only if we are the ones that take the action and that say, we're working here, will you give us a hand? So we are the ones that need to clear the way. And we don't have to be superhuman to do that. We just have to act on our divine inheritance and our spiritual consciousness in the moment. And that could be little baby steps. It can be a few big steps along the way. So that's where we are now. There are some other things I'd like to address, but I'm going to stop talking for a while so Michael can get a word in edgewise.
Okay, well, yeah, it's that was a really good distillation, of this complexity. And I've heard you talk about it before, about the the nature of the archonic cloud, the virus-like, not conscious, but somehow almost brilliantly intelligent in its strategizing, its ability to survive and replicate, right? And I remember some episodes, that happened where, um, to give an example of how a person or a group of persons can unwittingly and even with good intentions find themselves in that narrow bandwidth, right? That magnetic bandwidth, the flypaper, as you call it, where even in, defending what we think of as something good or right or noble, when we perceive it as being threatened, we can enter into fear, we can enter into enmity, like there was an episode in Crestone, early in our acquaintance, when you and I were just first getting to know each other. To see, do I want to tell this story?
I know where
Oh,
you're going. And I'm like,
you know
what
where
is
I'm going? Oh, sure, why not? The names have been changed to protect the innocent. Um, yeah, so I was involved at that time with a formidable attempt to restore the lineal a lineal restoration of the original order of the Knights Templar. And this had been done um, through finding and legitimizing a descendant of the original kings of Jerusalem, the Christian kings in the Crusader era, who had first given sovereign patronage to the poor Knights of Christ at the Temple of Solomon in the year 1118 AD. So don't worry, I'm going to fast forward to Crestone circa 2017. And there was a gentleman by the name of David Howe who had been legitimized by the Anglican Church as the legitimate inheritor of the title of king of the independent kingdom of the Isle of Man as a non-territorial, non-ruling royal house with fons honorum, source of honors, to be able to grant legal nobility titles, every bit as legal as Prince Charles, now King Charles of the House of Windsor. And so that gave rise to the restoration of the Templar Order, attempt to form a enforceable international court of human rights, and some other noble things. Well, this fellow, David Howe, plays around with being the king of the Isle of Man for a while, and it gets messy and embarrassing. And he goes on YouTube and he goes, I'm going to abdicate. This was silly. Thanks a lot, everybody. So I'm in a cafe in Crestone on my laptop. I'm going to try. I know this is a long story, Maya. You're probably going, oh my gosh, Michael, how are you going to get around to the point? Well, here we go. It's going to test my ability to thumbnail an interesting story. So I'm on the phone with the Grand Master of the Sovereign Magistral Order of the Temple of Solomon. And he's in Egypt. And I'm on a Zoom call in a cafe in Crestone. And he calls me up and says, Michael, King David of the Isle of Man has abdicated. And now we've got people popping up. They've seen the YouTube. They're vaguely related to the guy. And they're going, I'm the king of the Isle of Man. Now it's like, no, I am. I'm the inheritor. I'm the second cousin. No, I'm the king. We got all these people trying to claim the kingdom. And this is creating an embarrassment for the Templar Order because we're just trying to do a human rights court, do something good in the world like the old Templars did with Magna Carta back in the day. I said, oh, wow. So I'm in Crestone on my little headphone, and there's other people around, but they're only hearing one half of the conversation. And there's some well-meaning folks within earshot, other side. And one of them has had a sort of beatific vision on his arrival in Crestone of claiming the kingdom of light in Crestone for the forces of light. See, this comes back to our subject. It really does. How the forces of light and darkness interact on the planet to either, to present us with these kind of dilemmas. And so some other circumstance had caused one or two of these people who didn't know me very well to be suspicious of me. And so this was a day or two after this beatific vision. I'm here to claim the kingdom of light. And then they hear this suspicious fellow, Michael Henry Dunn, who's, he's this Templar order and the Grand Master, or used to work for the Russian Federation, and what else could be going on? And I don't know about this guy. So they hear me say, what? There's people trying to claim the kingdom and we have to stop them. So they go, oh my God, he knows about the forces of light are trying to claim the kingdom of light in Crestone. And he is with the dark forces and he's trying to stop them. And so I'm just over there drinking my latte, and talking about this goofball on the YouTube who said, I got to abdicate. I'm no longer the king of the Isle of Man. And other people going, I'm the king of the Isle. So I'm just saying, oh, so there's people trying to claim the kingdom. We've got to stop them. Is that what it is? So they gin up this whole scenario while I'm talking. And they're getting on their cell phones. We need help. We need more of the forces of light to come to the cafe because Michael Henry Dunn is working for the dark forces to try to stop the claiming of the kingdom of light. Right. And me, I'm kind of noticing it's like those people are looking at me kind of funny. No, it's not anything to do with me. That's just self-centered. We all think everything's about us. It's not about me. I'm just going to finish my latte. But they're going, and they're going. And so I think, well, whatever. So me and Prince Matthew over in Egypt, we figure, okay, well, we'll just find out what we can do. Talk to David. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Try to get our human rights court up and running and help the world. So I go out. These people have gone out to the porch. I come out. I'm walking past, and one of them says, yeah, he thinks he's going to claim the kingdom. We'll stop it. And then I go, no, that's stupid. Well, so one of these people happened to be sensible enough to say, well, Reverend Maya Nartumid has moved back to Crestone. And we all know that Maya is a beautiful soul and aligned with the light. And so maybe we should go check in with Maya about this thing where we think Michael Henry Dunn is kind of necromancer aligned with the dark forces trying to stop the kingdom of light. So they actually come and visit you. And I don't know, maybe you want to chip in here. I know this seems like kind of a long way to go around, but as I'm telling the story, I think it really does. I remember what you shared with them, and maybe you want to elaborate, but the gist of it was they let you know their perceptions. And you and I didn't know each other that well at that time. We'd had a few conversations, and I was beginning to understand the bigger picture from the Thothic perspective of what the Templar movement we were involved in was really about. And you let them know about the Archonic Cloud, and that what I was trying to do in Crestone, the work that Reverend Bill Bueller and Dame Edie and myself and a few others were trying to do in Crestone, that you said the Thothic presence came in very strongly in that moment when they came to you. And that you let them know that the Archonic Cloud is just waiting to feed on these moments when, even in defending something we think is good and noble, we get into fear and enmity and stop focusing on our own inherent connection to the light. And the Archonic Cloud goes, oh, goody, fear, enmity, self-importance, ignorance, etc. And you said, actually, Michael, he's not like a saint or anything, but he's a good soul trying to do something important that's part of a major program of light happening here in Crestone. And it was so funny because one of the people, who one day had thought I was a necromancer, the next day is like seeing me on the street and going, oh, but he's with the light. No, that's okay. I'm not a necromancer. I'm not a saint either. Let's have a cup of coffee, But anyway, I hand that over to you as an example of how tricky it is. And because they had the wisdom to come to you and to come into your beautiful environment and tune in with their own light signature, things took a better turn. Anyway, That's my
Yes, and these are beautiful people, and they're very dedicated to spiritual work. In
yeah.
other words, it's really tricky thing. It's tricky. It can happen to anybody, just about. You have to don't get carried away with any one thing, and the fact is, even if they thought that was happening, they got excited about it. When I say excited, not in a good way, but they got excited. Oh, we got to do something. Oh, and then they lost consciousness at that point. Something else to go. But the minute they were sitting in my temple living room, speaking to me, the minute I started speaking to them, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to believe anything Maya says. They barely knew me either. They didn't really know me that well. But when I started speaking to them with that energy, I could just see their faces change. Oh, wow. Yes, of course. And they softened, and that spiritual light that they have came into their presence, and to their, you know, honor, they immediately said, we were wrong. We see now what happened to us there. We were literally taken over because we got out of our space, out of our center. Now we know we're going to go back into our center, and we're going to welcome Michael Dutt. And, that showed their true higher spiritual qualities.
Right.
Okay. Somebody could have gone, well, I don't know about that. They could have been defensive and tried to say, I'm right. I don't want to be wrong,
Yeah.
But they're high enough in their spiritual consciousness. The highest spiritual thing you can do is to say, hey, I was wrong. No, I don't mean that you let somebody else convince you you're wrong when you're right. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I just mean when it hits you in your being, you go, I missed the mark there. Better than say wrong. I missed the mark, but I can adjust that now, and I can make amends.
Yeah. I saw something on Facebook, and maybe even this morning, somebody posted a meme. Spirituality is not about, walking around acting perfect. It's manifests much more powerfully when we are able to just be humble and look at our flaws, and not to just do, breastfeeding and, oh, I'm so humbly terrible, and because that's another form of pride.
It's
That's
it's
another form of
balance.
ego and
It's
pride.
having balance, and that's what my mother said when someone asked her. This was years ago. I go quote my mother because she was an incredible being. And they said, well, what is the most, this was way back before, long before I was born, back in probably World War II or something. And they said, what is the thing that you respect the most? The I don't know the words they used. And she said, balance. That's where it all is in balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, going back into what you shared in terms of the history of the dark and light forces here, I'd like to just ask if, what may be coming through from Thoth for you in this particular moment, right? It's, it's a really strange, interesting moment here where people are saying, oh, we're being prepped for disclosure because they're saying there's UFOs. They're like, oh, there's spy balloons and they're shooting them down, but they would never be able to shoot down real UFOs. So they're prepping us for disclosure. Meantime, there's Ukraine and Russia, and then the China-Taiwan situation seems to be heating up, and China's up in arms about us shooting down their balloons, and everything else that was already going on in terms of environmental devastation. That in this particular moment, I know you were sharing with me earlier that looking towards light principle 40, what we call the pyramid's radius matrix lighting up, and as we've shared in the past, the trigger for that lighting up, where the pyramids in all the places around the world, both known and unknown, reactivate, light up, and begin the process of the ascension of consciousness, the birth of the new earth star, etc. That the trigger for that, I always like to come back to this, you shared, Thoth says, is a critical number of awakened hearts on the planet, that there is some magic tipping point of a number of awakened hearts on the planet, such that those who are aligning themselves with the rising frequency of the new Earth star are able to somehow affect that trigger, and that there are allies, helpers, friends on a higher realm level, both in the inner Earth realm and what we call the Star Kindred, who are preparing for that moment. And I know we were touching on this before the program began, and I know you wanted to get back to it. And it feels like, in this moment, to somehow free ourselves from this program of fear, because a lot of all these news stories, most of it, that we're distracted by, scared by, tuning into, are designed to pull us into that narrow bandwidth, are designed to be the flypaper, are designed to keep us from focusing on the light and our own light. And the virtual background here, for me, some of you may remember that's Mount Challenger in the background in Crestone, Colorado, which we understand to be, on a fourth dimensional level, the resting place of the Ark of On, whose function is to, among various others, but as I understand it, to send out a light signal or code across the planet, which helps us re-anchor with that inherent light code that we cannot lose. As you said, we are Solarians. We're not children of the Anunnaki. We are children of the creational beings who brought forth this beautiful life on our planet. So with that, I'm sort of asking a complex question in terms of the present moment and what's going on in the preparation for Pyramidus Radius Matrix.
Well, for one thing, I did leave out, and I think it's important to bring it back into the topic, what Thoth calls the reparations. It's an odd name that he calls it, but that's what he calls it. When after the Anunnaki kind of did their thing on us, the Solarians came back. The Sun Lords among the Solarians came back to the planet to help us mitigate some of the problems in the DNA. Now, they couldn't cure it all with a magic wand, but they helped us to mitigate some of those problems so that our true Solarian beings could shine more, even if we still had a little kink and a twist there in the DNA system. And this was a long period of time that they worked with this, and then they came back for a second time. Because it's not just about the Anunnaki. We've made rock stars out of the Anunnaki. Everything's Anunnaki. It's really irritating me because, there I go and get my little narrow bandwidth by being irritated, but it just does. It rubs me the wrong way because it's like, yeah, they were here. They made a mess of things at a certain point, but they were not rock stars and they are not our ancestors. So let's just cut that cord. But anyway, these reparations, okay? Those says that we are in the final reparation now. Granted, the ships aren't landing and the beings aren't coming out and helping us because we wouldn't be receptive to that at this point in time. Many of us wouldn't. They'd freak out. But we are in a period of reparation. And they're working with us in that context. The Star Kindred, the Inner Earth Kindred, the other beings, they're working with us. Yeah, we have all this other interference, the little, gray guys grabbing people at night and all that stuff. That's a whole other topic. But, that's in the narrow bandwidth. I want to tell you, when the planet starts moving in more fully, or the part of the planet that decides to do so, moves more fully into the Pyramidus Radius, that's just going to be gone. That's a nightmare. And you shake somebody and wake them up and they go, oh, thank God, that was a bad dream. I'm not saying it isn't real, but I'm saying that that's how fast it'll be gone. And so anyway, back to the reparations. We are in one. We are in the final one now. And it's very significant, but in order to impress upon you how significant, I'd have to share the whole reparation story, which I'm not going to do here. But Michael and I did 2 shows on it, And I have the little insert videos too that we put in the shows that are shorter versions. So it's out there. Check Blue Star Rising for that and you'll find it. But, you know, it is an important thing because it means that even though we feel like we're alone a lot of times, they are helping us in a big, big way. It's just that it's not in the ways that we understand, like come down and fix this for me, or, you know, make sure my children don't starve, or, you know, why did you let my husband die? Or, you know, these are questions that are out of the agony of one's heart. And it's difficult to move past it, to see the bigger picture. But those things have been going on the planet forever. When we get to a point, they're working on a higher spectrum. They're not going down there and helping this person, this person, this person. Sometimes angelic beings do that for reasons unknown. I'm not going to try to figure that one out. But mostly what is happening is they're working on a much higher level of activity for this earth than we could even imagine. Because it's like when they get to that, help us get to that point, but we have to do the work we have to do to get there. Then the channel is switched. We don't have to worry about this or this or this or getting old or dying or any of that. We're on a whole nother playing field. We will still have challenges because challenges are the grist of the mill. It's structural tension, Thoth calls it. But it will be so much less than what we have now. We won't even notice it. Well, we will, but I mean, you know, it's just a whole nother thing. It will make sense. When we suffer here, it doesn't make sense. We try to make sense of it, but it really doesn't. But when we get to that other point of experience as incarnated beings, they may just still not know all the answers, but the process will make sense. And we will be able to connect to the communion of saints. And that will help us more visibly in front of our spaces and our eyes to be able to help us instead of going to the paying, you know, $500 to a shrink, you know, this is my story. Help me, you know, and they go, yeah, well, you know, take this drug. Instead of doing that, we will have these beautiful star kindred beings sitting in front of us, guiding us, helping us. We don't have to go into a trance. We don't have to meditate for 10 hours. They're there. They're right there. And they're going to help us. But we have to get to that point by helping ourselves. Now, this brings me to when you think. So I was making notes for what, you know, I was going to talk about today. And Thoth comes in and says, well, you must talk about the Nuastra. And I'm going, what? The who? I never heard of those dudes before. And he said, well, we have been speaking to you about the new race of human star genetic hybrids. And I said, oh, yeah, you mentioned it like 5 years ago, you know, and maybe you mentioned it 2 years ago again, little mentions, you know. He said, well, we're giving you the name we want you to call them now. That's NU apostrophe ASTRA. And this new race is created with human genetics, star genetics in certain waveforms. I'm not going to try to get into the depth of it. I don't even know it at this point. This is new information. But these are the beings that will be our hosts, I guess you could call it that. When we start being enough in the Pyramidus Radius matrix, it's not a place, it's not a country, it's a state of being. But everyone in that state of being will see everyone else that's in that state of being. You know, it will be a gathering of the spirit tribe. And so whether you're in Cincinnati or Crestone, Colorado or LA, suddenly you're not going to be very much in any of those places. Going to be seeing things differently, seeing the land differently, seeing the skies differently. We're not in the newer star yet, but we're in this consciousness realm. Excuse me. I have a lot of allergy problems, so I'm trying to do the best I can here. We will be in this consciousness realm that will allow us to become unified in a way we've never experienced before in incarnation. And so the Nuastra apparently is a welcoming team, you know, and they have our interests at heart, but they're also able to be very user-friendly. You know, they're not going to be, oh, I'm here for you. They're going to be, hey, let's sit down and talk. You want to share something? They're going to look beautiful, okay, and they're going to be sparkly and everything, but we're going to look a lot better too. Because the lights, the light system changes and the energies change and everything. So they'll be impressive, but they're going to be so connective and friendly and loving. You're not going to be, like, oh gosh, what do I say to this being? You're going to want to share, and it's going to be a connective note. Now, do we have to wait for that? No, we really don't, because all of everything is now. So, you can tap in to that field. Maybe it won't be your total reality and ever living moment, breathing moment right now. You've got kids to feed and groceries to buy and situations to manage, but you can tap into that and you can make it more and more your reality, not just the new Astra, but the whole feeling of consciousness, even into the new Earth star. The sky is not the limit. You can go beyond that, and you can do it now, and you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be connecting. You have to always say, I connect, I connect, I connect. And I recognize there's so much more. And I'm feeding off of that recognition now. And I'm not letting the little viruses feed off of me. I'm going to be the one that's feeding off of the light.
Wow. So, yeah, it reminds me of that old country song, farther along, we'll know all about it, right? Farther along, we'll understand why, right?
That gospel song, Michael. Yeah.
And when you say, the new Astra is a new race, what comes to mind is, of human and what we might call, well, just very high genetics, that I imagine that this is some kind of, blend of genetics where souls are able to incarnate into what we might call, newly evolved forms.
Yes.
That-
Some of the
because
souls.
they're going to be, presumably there's still the process of incarnation, even into much higher frequency forms,
Yes.
where, a soul of sufficient evolution is able to, like, okay, I'm taking on this service and this is the appropriate vehicle, just like we do before we're born into these bodies.
Yes.
And it's a similar process. Is that what I'm understanding?
It is. It is. Again, I can't speak extremely well on the topic because I just got it a few hours ago. As far as he talked to me about the hybrid, but I wasn't really, I wasn't listening too well because he was just passing through with it. But now it's what I got today. When I'm saying I just got it, I mean this about the name of it and how it's going to relate to the pyramid's radius matrix and all of that. But what I'm receiving as we speak is that, these beings are part of us. They want that genetic, of course, all the star kindred are, but there's a little going to be more of that. There's going to be more of the current human genetics in them. And they're not doing this, in some nefarious way. This is I'll find out more. I'm going to make a video on it. I promise I will when I get more information. But this is a process of willing experience. And I will be getting more on it, and I will make a video on it. But what I just wanted to bring it in for now was to say, it's really nice that we know we're going to have this great welcoming team. And I say we, I may not be alive then because I'm already old, but, I'll probably be there because even if I'm not incarnated again, I don't want to come back here. Anyway, I'm hoping, I'll get a little upgrade, but whatever form I'm in, I'm hoping that I will be there because they say that's going to happen. When you're in the pyramid's radius matrix, you start seeing that other beings are coming in that really are not in the body yet, or maybe they once were. I don't mean there's going to be a floodgate of them, but there's a kind of a wavy line there, because it's very close to that demarcation node when, again, the saints come marching in and we all go together, incarnated or unincarnated, into the new, the world system too, the new Earth star. So it's going to start filtering in. Now, I speak about this as a person who's not been there, not consciously. So I'm only telling you what I am perceiving from what I'm receiving. I'm sure there's a vast, larger picture to all of this. I do the best I can.
All right. Well, yeah, it's this feels like a moment perhaps where the picture of what we're sharing here may be complete, but I want to just check in to see if there's any other aspect or element that needs to be touched on. I mean, to me, the trying to distill the essence of it, in terms of clarifying for people, because there's so many different perspectives and as you say, the sort of glamorization of the Anunnaki and the idea that, oh yeah, then the Anunnaki gave birth to the Illuminati, and the Illuminati infiltrated the Freemasons and the Jesuits, and they run the world. We're all under the thumb of the Anunnaki. To dispel that, it's a great PR campaign. It really is.
Well, it is, because then it takes these sacred orders and it basically says, be afraid of them, be afraid of the knowledge that they bring forth. Now, those orders were not perfect. They were limited, just like any religious orders are limited, but they did, in the most part, go a little further. However, any order like that has its bad apples. This little group that gets off and goes and does their thing under the name of this order when they're really not under the name of the order. They're doing their own thing, So that happened, but it's not that all the Freemasons and all the, Templars and all. No, they had their solid spiritual core. Then they had their group around them. Were pretty good people doing the best they could to understand and disseminate. And then they had the ones that said, hey, I can do better than this. I'll just take the name. I'll go over here and I'll become the power. So that happens over and over and over again through history with all kinds of orders, with all kinds of religions. It just happened. Why? Because of everything I've just been telling you, and when people gather together in ignorance, they are prime targets for this downfall. And even the best of people, the best of souls, can be ignorant in the moment. Mm-hmm. You can have all the spiritual knowledge you think you have, and you have some, sure. And you get into an area where you don't know nothing. And you go, oh, but I know this and I know that. Yeah, but you don't know this.
Right.
He said, well, I know this and this. No, but you don't know this. So that's where the pitfall is, because you think you know so much. And then no, nothing. And that doesn't feel good.
Right.
So I have the power. I was a high priestess in this life, or I was so-and-so here. And so now, I'm the same thing now. They might have been a high priestess, but they're not a high priestess now.
Right.
I'm making fun of all this, and I don't really mean to. It's just that, you got to laugh about life. I laugh about myself a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, it, reminds me of how, like, take, for example, the Freemasons. We have a letter from George Washington, and at a certain point, he is writing to a friend, and Washington was a Freemason. He wasn't a conventional Christian. He was Masonic and believed in the divine architect. There's a letter he writes to a friend and says, I know for a fact that certain lodges of the Freemasons have been infiltrated by the Bavarian Illuminati. That's the father of our country. So this is not some kind of made up myth. So it turns out that the way that worked is, okay, so the Freemasons have the 33 degrees, right? And you reach the 33rd degree. And esoteric knowledge and discretion and faithfulness and loyalty and all the rest of it. And they give you what knowledge they had. And the Freemasons, in their origin, my research and understanding is that Templars around 1450, they're building Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, and they needed to impart a certain amount of Templar knowledge to Masons. literal Masons to help them build that. And from that came the Freemasons. So you have people who rise up to the 33rd degree, good, honorable people. Wow, I'm 33rd degree Mason. Isn't this wonderful? And then some of these other little folks who are a little more into power, a little more into goes, well, brother, now that you remember the 33rd degree, we can let you know about the secret higher, truly exclusive, beyond the 33rd, in order of, etc. And that it's an artificially created, bogus inner circle, which is essentially little more than a very well dressed up organized crime syndicate. This is basically what it was. And it was exposed as such in the US in the early 1800s. So this is how that kind of thing can happen. And so that gets dramatized, glamorized, and everybody goes, oh, the Freemasons are the evil sect that runs the world. No, there's a wonderful, hilarious YouTube comic sketch, British comedians, where it's set in modern times, and this guy becomes a barrister in the UK, right? Just like, oh,
is this Monty Python?
No, it's not Monty Python. It's more recent. Oh, I got my wig, and now I'm a barrister. Wonderful, And this sort of sly-looking guy sidles up to him in the lobby outside the court and says, "We've been watching you, brother." And we feel that you are ready to enter our secret brotherhood. And he goes, oh, really? I said, yes. What is your secret brotherhood? We secretly run the world. And there is one innermost secret that you must learn, which is always to be slightly intoxicated. To take one glass and only one glass of red wine twice a day. To be slightly intoxicated, and a whole new world opens up before you. And we are called the Order of the Inebriati.
Oh my God.
He goes, oh, I long to be a member of your order. Come, brother, to our initiation. Only one glass. Oh, I feel the power. And then, and of course, he becomes this incredibly powerful man. And then it says, well, if one glass of wine is good, perhaps three would be even better. No! Against the holy order of the inebriati, you become a mere drunk. Anyway, that's kind of what it is, the inebriati. These people, I think, they are, do they have a certain amount of dark power influence, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. But you're basically, you're saps who've been deluded by people who are trapped in the bandwidth. So nothing's better to get out of the bandwidth than some laughter. So I thought I would just share.
A little glass of wine, too.
A glass of wine, only one. The Brotherhood of the Inebriati.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, so with that, I think we're at a good place to say thank you, everyone, for rejoining us. It's wonderful to be back in our fun conversations with Michael and Maya once together for these.
I just have one last thing to say.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. Oh yeah, there we go. to the inebriati. And there are links below, of course, to the reparations video that he's talked about. Please do like and subscribe. And of course, Reverend Maya gives her wonderful Akashic readings. You can go to newearthstar.org, and we'll have the links below if you would like to have your own personal Akashic session with our dear friend, Reverend Maya Christine Nortumit. So with that, thanks, everyone. God bless us, everyone. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.